Hi friends, I hope all is well. When my leftover scraps container is full, I usually create small collages in a sketchbook or on loose papers. This time I'm using a 16-inch by 20-inch sheet of 140-pound watercolor paper instead. Once the paper is fully covered with collage papers, I'll cut it into smaller collages. I didn't draw any guidelines for the smaller collages that I'll cut out later. I'm challenging myself to work more intuitively. Let's see how it turns out. I like using liquid adhesives when creating large collages. It applies faster and easier than a gel medium or a glue stick. I decided to purchase Golden's Fluid Matte Medium for this project instead of using Mod Podge. I haven't used Fluid Matte Medium in a while, so I thought it'd be good to use it for this project. I'm starting with relatively large elements that will be considered the base or foundation. This is usually how I start collaging, and it'll be helpful for this project. Starting with large elements, then add medium-sized ones, then at the end add smaller accent elements. The larger elements can potentially be on 2 or 3 of the smaller collages. Also, I want to start with dark and mid-tone elements first. I'm placing these larger elements around the surface in a way that's balanced, not evenly spaced because the sizes and shapes are different. Since the edges of the watercolor paper are deckled, you'll see that some of the edges will remain untouched. I'm not too concerned about collaging to the edges. When I cut the smaller collages, I'll remove the deckled edges. The finished sizes of each of the smaller collages will be 4 inches by 5 inches because I can get exactly 16 of them. Once I have a few of these main elements in place, then I'll start gluing. As I build this large collage, you'll notice that I won't be gluing all the elements at once. If I'm unsure about the size, shape, color, or placement, then I'll leave it unglued until I decide. You're probably noticing that I'm working around my table. I didn't want my body to block any of the collage that I'm working on. A benefit of working in this way is that I can view the collage from all sides. It's an excellent way to get a different perspective of how the design is taking shape. I can see if it's balanced and cohesive on all 4 sides. I'm looking to make sure they're all 3 values and that they're large, medium, and small elements. This is extra helpful because I'll be cutting it up into smaller collages. I'm hoping each of the smaller collages won't need any additional elements, but I'm giving myself some leeway if it's needed. Quick note that during this video, there'll be a mix of narration and music. At this point, I'm starting to audition papers that have a cutout or what I call a bridge shape. I felt that the collage needed at least one of these different shapes to create a more interesting design. It is a risk to add these elements because I don't know exactly where the smaller collages will be cut. These elements may be cut into awkward shapes. In the end, I decided to use only one bridge shape. I consider it a minor risk to include only one. If it turns out to be an awkward shape on one or two of the small collages, then I'll fix it. I'm starting to add more mid-tone value papers to balance the design. Also, you'll see that I added more dark and mid-tone elements using the same papers as the ones already glued down, and papers that are similar colors but different patterns. Doing this will continue to make the design cohesive without becoming too busy looking. There's a lot going on in this collage due to its size. It's a fine line between creating an interesting design and a busy mess. I will add a few new papers, but those will be limited. I'm being mindful that this large collage will be cut into multiple smaller collages. I started reviewing some of the untouched watercolor paper areas. I needed to decide if those areas will work well with this design or if some or all will need to be covered. I brought out this painted used tea bag paper for this area, which will add a slight pattern along with transparency. Transparency keeps some of the lightness to this area. Once this element is in place, I will add a few other transparent papers that are painted and stamped deli papers. I want to point out that I'm adding the purple pattern paper in the middle of the bridge shape element, but I'm not gluing it down right away. I wasn't sure if it's the right size or color. If I do use it, then I need to decide if I need to keep the area around it white or add another painted paper or maybe a transparent paper. While I decide, I'm adding more light value papers. Adding long, narrow elements is a great way to ensure that part of it will be on more than one collage. Also, it's a great way to tie the collages together in a cohesive way. I'm stopping at this point because it's a good time to cut this collage into smaller collages. As you can see, I decided on keeping the purple element within the bridge element. The white area around it looks good, so I left it as is. I did add a few small elements to the collage, but I want to wait to review the small collages to see if or where more is needed. I'll cut this collage off camera, then come back so we can review each one. Let's have a quick look at the small collages in the same position pre-cut as a reminder of their placement before going over each one. I'll be reviewing each one in portrait orientation because that's probably how I'll display them. This one was in the upper right corner. I'll continue down all the way to the upper left corner so you know for reference. I brought out this purple paper for the top section to cover some of the white paper showing. Also, this yellow paper is another option for the other white area or as an accent. I'm not cutting a big section of it because I want it to be an accent paper. I like having elements in different sizes. It makes the design more interesting. I decided to use the same purple paper to cover the other white area and use the yellow paper as an accent. I think it'll make the design more cohesive. Having yellow papers along both edges of the collage would make the design too balanced, and that's not visually pleasing to me. Having a small amount of the other yellow paper placed slightly in from the side is better. It looks finished now. If you're new to my channel, I like to include grayscale versions of my collages so you can easily see the different values. I don't like this orientation because it feels top heavy. When I flip it around, it looks better, but I want to add one more circle. It will make the design more cohesive and interesting. This one looks unfinished to me. Also, I don't like that there's only a tiny amount on the lavender paper here and the black and white circles paper here. I think it's best to cover the existing purple paper with a larger piece of it. Instead of placing it horizontally, I think placing it at a slight angle would be more interesting. And then at the top, I'm adding a scrap of the same lavender paper next to the black paper. It will balance with the other lavender element. Also, it'll help the design by having different proportions of the same paper. All this one needs is a thin element to cover where the watercolor paper is showing at the top. Instead of introducing a new color, I'm using a scrap of yellow painted paper. I'll trim it, then we'll go on to the next one. You can see a sliver of the light aqua paper up here. That doesn't bother me, but this white area does. It looks unfinished. I was thinking of using the similar green paper to balance with this green element. I don't have any more of that exact paper, but this one is a good option. Or the other option is to use the same aqua paper as that tiny bit at the top. I decided to go with the aqua paper. It will help the tiny aqua element make more visual sense. The only thing that bothers me is that there's too much white here. My option is to add another piece of the circle deli paper, but I don't have more of the exact one. Or the other option is to introduce a new color pattern paper like this pink one. It's a lighter version of this existing element, and it does work with this element as well. I think it's a better choice than one of the circle deli papers. I don't mind this tiny sliver of lavender because it's the same paper as the larger element. It adds a nice contrast of proportion. This piece at the top does bother me, so let's fix it. I didn't have any more of that paper, so I brought out a scrap of black with white circles paper. It's a good option to cover that area. I'm not adding to this collage. It's balanced and cohesive because of the different colors, sizes, and shapes of elements. Same with this one. I like how the bridge element works well even though it's trimmed on 3 sides. This white area makes the collage look unfinished. Instead of adding a solid painted paper, I'll be adding another piece of stamped deli paper. I just need to find a good section of it. I'm okay with having 2 separate pieces and having it overlap on top of another element. I'm okay with a little bit of this black paper showing. It's not that noticeable. If I decide to put it on a greeting card, then I'll probably trim it off. What does bother me is this tiny gap right here. I'm covering it up with an element in one of these colors because I didn't want to introduce a new color. Before I glue that pink element, I want to address the white area. It looks visually awkward to me. It makes the collage look unfinished. I want to keep some of the white showing because it's a light element, so I'm using more of the painted deli paper in that area. This collage has the same issue as the previous one. The white area makes it look unfinished. I'm pulling a few deli papers to audition for this area. I like this stamped deli paper because I like how it looks on top of the yellow element that's next to it. This one is almost finished, but it needs a small element in this area. This small bright pink element will add a color and size contrast to the collage. I also want to mention that I really like the transparent look of the stamped deli paper on top of the purple and aqua elements. This collage is good as is. The design is balanced and cohesive. I like the proportion of the small lavender element. It adds a size contrast. Also, the one transparent element is different than the other elements, so that adds a nice detail. Another one that is good as is, I'm flipping it around just to see which orientation I like better. Either one is good. Let's go on to the final collage. This white area needs an element so the collage doesn't look unfinished. The scrap of painted deli paper fits perfectly. It adds a nice detail to the design. I really enjoyed the challenge of this collage session. It was fun working with the uncertainty of whether the smaller collages would have a good design. Also, it was helpful giving myself some leeway to add additional elements if needed after the smaller collages were cut to size. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. Thanks for watching. Take care.